All right, I want to talk to you today about some things that are a little bit on the heavy side, but it's all part of theology, all part of getting our doctrine straight. And it's a really foundational idea that lies at the heart of so many things that then get built out of it. So I want to talk today about the theologian of cross versus the theologian of glory. And these are two ideas that often get talked about, maybe discussed, and I don't always think maybe quite the right way. People will talk about, well, that's a theology of the cross, or that's a theology of glory. And sometimes people think they're talking about a theology of the cross means, yeah, that's about suffering and learning to be able to deal with suffering, having a place for suffering. And then a theologian of glory means you just want everything to be easy. And so the theology of the cross, it's all about suffering. There's an aspect of that that's true, but it's really not the heart of it. Then I'll hear people who kind of reduce a theology of cross versus theology of glory basically down to works versus grace. Theology of glory is trying to earn salvation, trying to earn God's favor, and a theology of the cross is simply receiving what God gives in grace. And again, there's parts of that are true. It definitely is an aspect of this discussion, but it really doesn't get to the heart of it quite as much as it needs to. It doesn't really get to the guts of it. This whole idea grows out of a disputation, which was meant to be like a academic gathering where you actually would discuss some kind of important topic. And of course, for theology, it's a theological topic. A disputation that was done by Luther back in 1518. This is very early in the Reformation. You can even debate how clear the gospel is coming to Luther yet at this point. It's all kind of coming together. But in 1518, in the spring, he went to Heidelberg and he had a meeting there among other Augustinian monks. It was actually a meeting called by his order, the Augustinians, to try to find out, what are you teaching, Luther, in wake of your 95 Theses? What's really going on? So this is one of Luther's first chances to kind of distill what he was really trying to get at and really thinking through some things. And he presented 28 theses for debate, and in one part of the disputation there were other things going on. But the key comes in Theses 19, 20, and 21. And I'm just going to read those for you. And this is a translation that says, gives it this way: that person does not deserve to be called a theologian who claims to see into the invisible things of God by seeing through earthly things, events, or works. Thesis 20. But that person deserves to be called a theologian who comprehends what is visible of God through suffering on the cross. The Thesis 21, finally. The theologian of glory calls evil good and good evil. The theologian of the cross says what a thing is. Now that's a very good summary of the contrast here between a theologian of the cross and a theologian of glory. A theologian of glory calls evil good and good evil, and a theologian of the cross calls a thing what it is. What Luther's getting at here then is a couple key things. First of all, he's talking about a person, a theologian, not just about a general theology or a way of approaching things. He's talking about a person who's doing theology and how you do it. So this is the first kind of key to us, is thinking, what kind of theologian am I? How do I go about the theological task? Am I allowing God to take the lead, or am I trying to take the lead? Am I saying what things are and just calling it what it is, or am I trying to make things fit into my way of operating? Am I trying to make things fit into my way of seeing the world? Who's calling the shots here? And now we're getting closer, I believe, to the real heart of what's going on here between a theologian of the cross and a theologian of glory. A theologian of glory is always interested in trying to preserve some space for himself. A theologian of glory wants to matter. He wants to count. He wants himself to make a difference. And so if it comes to works, yeah, his works should contribute to salvation. That just makes sense. When it comes to election, well, God should elect me because he knows the kind of person I am. He knows my heart. He knows how serious I am. When it comes to understanding God and figuring out the things that are irrational or impossible for us to understand, the theologian of glory thinks, this should make sense because I have a reasonable mind and God's not unreasonable. I should be able to figure this out. And so a theologian of glory starts to go beyond what he does see and tries to fill in the blanks in what makes sense, what's rational. A theologian of the cross starts from a very different standpoint. Theologian of the cross doesn't start from with what he knows and what he thinks or what he understands. Theologian of the glory starts with the reality that he is dead in his sins and trespasses, and he sees in the cross God's truth, Christ crucified for me. And God choosing me in Christ, not because of me or because of what I've done, because of his love for me. And the theologian of the cross then has the understanding that he doesn't matter. He doesn't count. He's not important. A theologian of the cross is not trying to preserve space for himself or his reason or his free will. And free will is one of the last dying breaths of a theologian of glory who wants so bad to count. You see, well, at least I have free will, right? Or I'm not human. And a theologian of the cross says, no, I don't have free will. God does it all. I'm dead, remember? And dead creatures don't do anything. They don't decide to become alive. They don't make themselves something. God has to do it all. A theologian of the cross has come to terms with who he is within creation, within God's sphere of activity, within God's work of redemption. A theologian of the cross calls a thing what it is. And the first thing that he calls out is himself. So what this means then is a theologian of the cross operates not from self-assurance or from humans mattering or having a great confidence in his rationality or his ability to think or his feelings or his emotions or his sincerity. A theologian of the cross throws that all away and says, all that matters is Christ crucified for me, what he has done for me. I'll cling to that. I'll cling to the cross. Not me, but what God is doing. That's what counts for a theologian of the cross. So the difference could not be more stark. Theologian of glory is always running around trying to figure out how he can matter, how he can count, how people should pay attention to him, how God should care about what he thinks, how God should play by his rules, how God should do what is just according to his justice, how God should do what is fair according to his fairness, how God should do what is loving according to his loving. You see, theologian of glory is always starting with self. Theologian of the cross starts with God's reality. He's creator. He's made me alive. He can call the shots. He makes me alive. He chooses me. He saves me. It's his work. I'll trust him with that. And then the final thesis of the Disputation is where Luther says that a God does not go out and find the loving thing and choose it because it's so attractive, but he chooses it, and then that's what makes it attractive. That's the core of what a theologian of the cross clings to and knows it. And when you're living that way, it makes all the difference. Now, one last quick word here before I wrap up. It's easy to run around looking for all the theologians of glory doing all these wrong things. There's one, and there are plenty. They're easy to spot. But it's not really the point of learning the theologian of cross, theologian of glory, so that you can have a new pastime of picking out all the theologians of glory and figuring out where they're getting things wrong. The real key here, of course, is the self-application. The dangerous theologian of glory is not the one out there trying to peddle some quick way to find righteousness with God or some quick way to have a more fulfilling life. The real theologian of glory you've got to watch out for is the one that lives in your own heart, because he doesn't go away. We have a sinful self. We are sinful and saint at the same time, simul justus et peccator, and so the theologian of glory is always hanging around. He likes to come back and reassert himself. He likes to shove his way into how we think about things, how we do our theology, how we operate with other people. Theologian of glory is always wanting to assert himself again and rise up and say, wait, I matter. Look out for the theologian of glory inside. He's the one you need to be most on the lookout for. Not the ones out there, but the one who lives here. And then yield again to God's truth. Because when you live in the cross, then you have Christ's glory. That's the only glory that matters and the only glory you need.